everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson, and I'll be your host for this one. And we are back together as a trident, as Scott likes to call us. That means Scott and Joris are back for this one. Guys, I hope you're doing well this evening.
Woohoo! Who doesn't love a trident? Hi guys, hello everybody. Hope you're all well.
It's been a turbulent 2 weeks since the last time I joined in a private time. As you also can hear, probably some sickness has caught me, but I'm recovering, so I just feel just about enough to join this recording. And let's dive into it.
Like the Undertaker rising from his tomb in a WWE kind of match. That was Joris. Just he heard the podcast was going, and just up he got, in he came straight on the mic. Good timing, because it looks like we might have a new format to discuss, and I'm sure some people tuning in would have seen the news about that. We will get to it. It could make a lot of our conversations over the past couple of months completely irrelevant, which is really, really fun, especially around kind of relegation. The top bit seems, that's still going to stay the same, but the relegation is looking like it's going to be a little bit messy, but we'll get to that after we do a kind of roundup of the games and stuff like that. Hopefully we'll have time to really talk about it, and it could be completely wrong, but to caveat this it looks like this is the plan they're going to go for, the one we're going to talk about, but things can still change. People could still get cold feet and kind of change their minds on Thursday when the vote is taking place. Anyway, to the action on the pitch, some really, really key important games that didn't really go either team's way this week, so plenty to talk about there. First one was Mechelen drawing 1-1 with St. Truden. Hazy shouting at the fan base. That was quite a funny moment at the end, having to be held back. Dender, they drew 0-0 with Beerschot, but they spent most of the game with 10 men. Westerlo, they lost 3-1 to Charleroi in the Richtermill derby, I guess we could call that one. Antwerp drew 2-2 with Leuven. Club Brugge lost 2-1 to Standard Liège, which led to some looser lips, as we might be calling this one, because last week there were some loose lips, and even looser lips this week. Genk drew 0-0 to Ghent in the British favourites derby. Anderlecht, they lost 2-0 at home to Union in the Brussels derby, and in the big one at the bottom, Kortrijk drew 1-1 with Cercle Bruges. Yves van der Haag was given his marching orders ahead of that one, and Bern Stork's back, because apparently they only have a couple of names on their shortlist and they just kind of rotate around them. But let's start in Mechelen. That draw against St. Truden, just not an ideal result for Malinois at all. Get that opening goal with the Janssen own goal, although in the stadium they gave it to Benito Raman, and even though he didn't touch it, it was definitely a Janssen own goal. St. Truden just kind of hung about in it. Ferrari scores what was a really nice finish, actually. Really, really nice finish from him. And then, guys, the biggest talking point in this was that Lapissan missed. Like, he just has to score that. He really just has to score that. He hits the post. He's not the only one that had a miss like that this weekend. But, not a great moment for him. Could have made a massive difference at the bottom of the table. And like I just said a few minutes ago, after the game, Hazy being held back, I thought he was like having a go at his players, and it looked like he was actually having a go at the fan base. I guess, Scott, that I know you love to talk about body language and reading into things. I think it's quite obvious what was going on and how much pressure he feels like he's under at the moment, because I think he knew that was a game they really, really needed to win, just to kind of cement their place, potentially not, may not even matter at all, in the Pro League.
Yeah, I think the best thing about Hazy's outburst, actually, the thing that made me laugh the most, was the fact that poor little Rafik Belgali was the member of the playing staff who was trying to hold Besnik back. That was the best bit of it for me. But definitely some pressure there. A draw, I think, ultimately a fair result. Mechelen actually got a little bit lucky in getting the first goal. Didn't play that great, pretty mediocre on the whole. Got lucky with the goal, got their noses in front, and, it's a game management issue, just couldn't see it out. And you know what games are like when they're 1-0, then even though St. Truden weren't playing well, particularly in the first half, better in the second, created a bit more, ultimately could have nicked it in the end, pretty undeservedly, although they did create more of the two sides. I think the draw was the right result. Mechelen are just pretty poor defensively and have been for a while now, and they're just so fragile. They're playing like a side who are playing with a lot of tension, somewhat understandably. It just goes to show that sides at the top can play with tension for the opposite reasons that affect you in the same ways. In fact, Hazy was commenting on this afterwards. He was talking about, the importance of the game kind of paralysing the players a little bit and how they didn't really react that well to it. He then, somewhat strangely, I thought, chose to, and maybe this is me getting lost in translation a little bit, but it looked to me like he was throwing the players under the bus gently by saying that playing within themselves, that reaction, that cautious reaction, is something the players choose to do. He said it wasn't, it's not something I've instructed them to do in terms of dropping deep. It's something that psychologically they do because of the tension that they feel in the moment. And I thought that's a very odd thing to kind of say publicly. You would normally keep that in house, but yeah, they've got work to do still. Mechelen have got Beerschot, Charleroi, and Dender. They need certainly another 3 points, arguably 4, depending on the way other results go. That the same goes for lots of other sides. Felix Mazu says, "I want to win our last 3 games." It's as simple as that. That comment might be null and void because of some news we're going to discuss later around potential formats. The implications of which for St Truden and Kortrijk are potentially kind of quite big. But St Truden have got Kortrijk, Beerschot and Leuven coming up next. So they've got a chance to do something. I suppose if you're on the playing or the coaching staff, you can't afford to read or take anything psychologically or otherwise into what might come out of this league structure vote on Thursday. You have to deal with what you've got on a daily basis. So from that point of view, nothing's changed really.
What a mess it's going to be. Maybe we should actually discuss the format before, because anything I've noted down in all the games might, well, at least especially the ones involving teams like Mechelen and Sint-Truiden, a bit lower in the table. All these things could be void indeed. But yeah, winning 3 games in a row, easy task for a side that has only won 1 over the last 13 games, of course, in Sint-Truiden.
We know that Felice is an optimist, though, don't we, Joris?
I suppose you could say that, yeah. Ultimately they did salvage a point, but and indeed could have nicked it, as you guys mentioned it. But I still feel okay. Again, maybe in the end it doesn't matter anymore. But definitely at that time they didn't know this yet. It feel they should have done something at the back instead of only reinforcing the front, or mainly reinforcing the front areas of the pitch. They only got 3 clean sheets this season so far, and I mean, you need your defense to perform well, to be able to really to compete in the league a bit and stay in the league as well. In the end, that seems not to be an issue anymore. But again, caveating that. On Mechelen, well, same goes, I guess, but they this time had a different issue for once. Up front, it was not going very well. 0 shots on target, but scoring 1, so that was great for them. But apart from that, actually, I don't think we need to say much. I had noted down they could have been safe if they would have not conceded late. They probably are safe anyways, even with just a point, and even if the format as we still know it stays in place, they probably still are going to be fine, even with a point. All in all, this was mainly a chanceless game. One thing showing that was the highlights were like half the normal highlight size, more or less, in general. The ones I watched on the Walloon broadcaster, at least.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be very difficult not to talk about the format because it's going to just keep popping up and up and up. But I feel like we do need to we're going to have such a big discussion potentially on it. And it is kind of save it, but I think people can probably work out like what is going to happen. And to be fair, it makes people listen all the way through to the end of the podcast, so that's always good for us. So yeah, it will tease you and be like those annoying people like who just they put those YouTube videos out like 10 things, or like, can't believe this happened, and then it take 20 minutes to get to the one thing that happened. It's not even that exciting, but this is exciting and well worth hanging around for.
Except it will be an hour or more probably as well.
yeah, exactly. But we talk about other things in between that, so it's well worth it. Definitely well worth it. Dender against Beerschot. A game that Beerschot will look back and think they obviously needed to win because they had the man advantage for most of the game after Roman Kvet got injured, but they just can't win games. And I think they still haven't reached the points that they got the last time they were relegated. And they're starting to run out of a bit of time. I think they got 17 points, but that might be me just making things up. I'll have to check that. But I'm pretty sure they're not there yet because they've only got 15 and 2 wins. It's just like, we were talking about, like, a team has to get relegated regardless of what the format might change to, and that team has to be Beerschot, like, doesn't it? Like, I'm sorry, but they have to go down. It's best for them, it's best for the league. Like, there's teams in the second division that are definitely better than them. Arguably, like, most of that kind of top 6 in the second division is probably better than them. For Dender, it's a little bit worrying, I guess, because they're only 2 points above that kind of bottom 4, and, like, I've been saying all season, I think they could easily slip into that. I think they depends on what the format is, but they could be fine. This game I kind of earmarked as the one they really, if they won this, they'd be fine, sort of thing. But they've now got Union and Genk to play, and those two teams are, I think it's safe to say, I think Union are title contenders because of the format, and Genk are obviously title contenders regardless of the format, and they would win it if it wasn't for the format. And then Mechelen on that final day, Mechelen might have something to play for, but I could see them getting a point or winning that game against Mechelen because I feel like they thrive in that sort of situation. But frustrating for them in the sense of losing that man. I think with 11 men, they probably could win this game because I just feel like they can pop one of those things out of nothing and win it. But a 0-0 draw, that again, yeah, it's one of those ones that's the classic footballing cliche. It doesn't suit either side.
Yeah, well, Beerschot failing to take advantage of playing against 10 men for more than half the game. And I don't know about anybody else, but I don't care whether you're Beerschot and you're hopeless and have been pretty much all season and you're moored to the bottom of the table or not. You know, you've got to get the points in that situation. But fair play to Dender. They drop into the low block, which, you know, most and all sides are going to do in that situation when they lose a man. It's up to Beerschot to break it, and they couldn't do it. You know, lots of sides couldn't, but yeah, just it's not good. Interestingly, on Dender, Vincent Everard, I thought had some pretty interesting things to say after this game. He was talking about how, and he's been talking about this more and more in recent weeks. It's not just Immersed this week. He said that he thought lots of small but key moments had gone against them this year, and he went on to talk about specifically, obviously, the situation with red cards. They've had 5 red cards now, which is the joint most this season so far with Leuven, and I think he feels that some of those red cards were, you know, a bit debatable as well, and obviously red cards tend to be pivotal in outcomes in games, so I think he feels that their points tally arguably would be a little bit better had they not been on the wrong end of some of, you know, what he thinks obviously weren't great decisions. I think they're going to be all right. Beerschot, on the other hand, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're at the bottom of the table or not. You know, you've really got to be getting more out of a game in that scenario when something's handed to you like that. I mean, Beerschot's last 3 games, Mechelen, St Truden and Westerlo, they're playing sides that desperately need points for their own reasons. You don't see them getting too much out of those. I think Dender will get a return out of their 3 games, the 3 that Ben just mentioned somewhere. The Mechelen one, as Ben said, I agree with him, is the most likely one, I think, mainly because Mechelen are playing with that inner tension we were just talking about. That means you never quite know what you're going to get at the moment. And again, the new format, which we will get to, another tease there, folks, that could have implications for both of these sides, bizarrely.
Yeah, definitely what can be said about the Denders, of course, shooting themselves in the foot after that early red card, with that early red card. Yeah, and especially since this was the game for them to win. Now they might need to take some points where it's not really expected, or not. Again, I'm already tired of doing that with everything now, but I guess we should keep doing that. But yeah, just a silly red card, I guess, as well. And I can understand the frustration there as well, the dive in. Yeah, then the professional foul from Kvits, and yeah, he really, it seems at least, he realizes during the action he's trying not to touch the Beerschot player, but in the collision has to happen at some point, of course, unfortunately for him. And then it was too late. But yeah, again, not a game to talk too much about, I guess. They're not too eventful apart from that. Not enough chances created by Beerschot, who do get their second point away from home, so they're doubling that tally at least, for what it's worth. Their first clean sheet away from home as well. They have 4 in total, which is actually in comparison not too bad as to other sides in their area. But yeah, now especially, I'll still keep bringing it in, but now it might feel even worse that they did not win this game, because they would have been in a real shout of maybe escaping the last spot and therefore being safe in the next 3 games. If they would have won this one, they would have been in touching distance at least, which they are not at the moment. But okay, again, caveat we have there. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Every time we think or not even every time we think, because they don't, but you just see those opportunities slipping away from them, don't you? And it's just like, oh, this is so frustrating, but not surprising. It confirms that they are where they are because of how bad they are. It just sums it up. Aside that, I mean, I just don't really understand what they are at the moment of Westerlo. They just seem so poor, but then they've won a couple of games in recent weeks, but then they're poor again. And I don't know if you guys watched this game, but it got to half time and they were showing highlights of the game, and one of the highlights was a blocked shot on the edge of the area that was never going in. And I was just like, this is how bad this first half has been. It was so bad. I was just like, flipping it. Why am I watching this? Why am I spending my time? I think I just got back from watching Worthing against Salisbury in the 6th tier, and that was an absolute storming game, and I had to come back to this nonsense. But Vuskovic scored again, so that's good for all the Spurs fans seeing their boy score. But Stulic scored twice, lovely, just poachers finishes really from him, scoring as well. For Charleroi, still not out of that kind of top 6 debate. I think it'd be very hard for them to get in there with those 3 games. They got Genk, Mechelen, and Club, and I mean, they could obviously win all 3 of those. It's not crazy, but I just don't think they will. Westerlo, results actually really went their way this weekend, and they could have really jumped up to 10th. I think they'd have got if they'd got the win in this one, but just don't trust them. I just really don't trust them. I think that game, they were just, for all the kind of young talent they've got, they were just really poor and really boring and just not very exciting. And I think that's how I feel about it. I've been trying to work out why. It's not like I'd maybe dislike them is probably the wrong word, but I don't, if I'm like, oh, Westerlo on, I'm not like, oh, I really want to watch that game. I'm just like, oh, do I am I going to put myself through that? Especially at home, there's just something about, I don't know if it's my terrible stream that I'm watching it on. It's just very depressing to watch. It just feels very not very entertaining. I think I'd hand them down to, and I think they'll survive because they'll be I think they will be fine compared to the other teams. I don't think, we talked about Dender shooting themselves in the foot. I don't think Westerlo shoot themselves in the foot as much as some of the other teams like St. Truden and Kortrijk and that. And eventually they'll pick up a couple of points and stuff. And for them, it's kind of these next 2 of the next 3 games are massive. If they can get points out of Leuven and Beerschot, they'll probably be okay. But do you trust them to get points out of those games? I really don't at this moment in time.
Well, this game was interesting for another reason, actually, as well, more so to do with Westerlo fans. There was a point in the game where they started to throw a lot of cups onto the field. Now, normally that's a moment of dissatisfaction with something or someone. But in fact, what had actually happened was there was a fan in the stand that took unwell, and they weren't getting first aid attention or any attention at all. So they decided to throw all their cups of beer onto the field, which got the attention of lots of people. And sure enough, the first aid attention did come along as a result of that. So that was a nice little positive moment. And I haven't seen anything about the outcome of whether that individual is okay or not. I hope they are, but I thought, nice little shout out to the Westerlo fans and being creative for the right reasons on that one. In terms of the game, I think Westerlo in recent weeks, definitely this weekend, are being affected by the same thing that seems to have got a hold of Mechelen at the moment, that tension. It's squeaky bum time. Which seems to go on for quite a while in the latter part of the stages in Belgium. I think that held them back, but they didn't do anything to get out of the game, this weekend. Charleroi were really solid and deserved the win. Big shout out to Nikola Stulic, had an excellent game, is now on 9-15 this season. Pretty impressive. I remember, I think it'd probably be a few months ago now, I remember Ben asking, I think it was that weekend where he scored a couple quite early on. You said, oh, hello, have they found a new striker potentially here? And I remember exactly what I said, and that was, too early to know yet, we don't have enough data. Well, 15 appearances, 9 goals in those 15. His shot ratio over that time is pretty healthy as well. So he's got something going for him. If he can maintain this current level, then maybe. I hope that doesn't stop Charleroi from going ahead and buying another striker in the summer regardless. I hope they don't go, we'll just stick with this because it appears to be getting a bit better. We know their budgets are quite tight with the new stadium plans and all of those things. They still need that other striker, I think. But he's worth underlining. He has quietly been improving, and there may be something there yet. They're playoff 2 safe. Outside chance of playoff 1. I agree with you guys. I don't see them making it. Although mathematically they do still have a chance. Westerlo still have a little bit of work to do to save their arse at the moment.
Yeah, what confidence, a little bit of confidence can do. I think I even still burnt Stulic a few months ago still because he didn't score. I guess he scored his first goal probably in the beginning of January or something. That's probably exaggerated, but it's not too far off of the truth. And I remember, what was it? He had a spell where he in 2 games he hit the bar, and then specifically the home game against the Genk home game against Charleroi, there was a open shot that he missed against Elouadi. Around that period, he had a few really big chances that he missed, big easy chances that he missed, and would have meant the world of difference for Charleroi and might have even put them in a better position and maybe closer towards the Champions playoffs. Now the return fixture is upon us on a Friday, so I already know who is going to score as well, of course. But that's definitely something to watch out for still. But as you hear, Charleroi still plays against Genk. They can win that, but they also still have to play against Club Brugge as well. They can win that, but it's not very likely that they would win both games. They probably will need to if they really want to. They actually really do need to win both of those fixtures and all their fixtures, remaining fixtures, to really still have the slightest of chances for the Champions playoffs. Stulic indeed on a run, 9 now. At this rate, he could become top scorer if the season runs on for a little longer as well, of course. Heijmans also adding 1 again as well, notably. So he remains the top scorer of Charleroi at the moment as well. So who would have thought that there's 2 players who are around 10 goals at Charleroi this season still? And unfortunately, it didn't really, they got a few more points, but it didn't really change the shape of their season that much either. Now it's always been ups and downs. Of course, it could have been a lot worse if this would not have turned much, but their goal scoring. But nonetheless, remarkable in this game maybe was also that both sides changed their goalkeepers for this game. Van Langendonk in goal for Westerlo, Lavallée for Charleroi, de la Vallée. Pardon me there. Westerlo, they really tried to defend after the lead, but they forgot that they cannot defend, I guess. So they still conceded 3. They only got 3 clean sheets, so worse than Beerschot at the moment as well, and together with Sint-Truiden as well. Yes, I have been looking at those stats if you hadn't noticed yet this weekend. But Charleroi should be safe now, of course, regardless of the format, with 6 points ahead, and 10 games won as well, which also plays in their favor in case some of the other sides would equal them still, to put them in front of those sides. And the Mill beating his former side as well, still worth to mention, I guess. So that might be a sweet victory for him personally.
Yeah, I'm sure it definitely was. I'm sure he probably really did enjoy that. And I think, we can have this conversation maybe at the end of the season, depending on what happens. But I think Westerlo, I was just looking through their team, and basically you've obviously got Langendog, Neustadter, late 30s. Everyone else is like early 20s. And then Haspalat's the only one that's kind of like 25. And you'd say that kind of coming into his prime in terms of like as a player. I think that's one of their issues, is they just buy all these really exciting young talents and just hope it's going to work. I don't think they build the squad very well, to be honest. And every summer or winter, they're like, "Ooh, what shiny young player can we just bring in and sign?" And we'll work out how to develop them and then where they're going to fit within the grander scheme of things. It's another time, but we've got this really exciting young player, and hopefully that'll work. And I just don't think they do that. And they played a Charleroi team that are also terrible at squad building. So anyway, Antwerp have signed lots of old boys, and Dennis Adoy scored, which was quite funny. I didn't expect to see that. Although, to be fair, I think he's actually been playing quite well. Like, he's played quite well for Antwerp. I don't think he doesn't look like he's like beyond it. Do you know what I mean? And even last year for club, he was pretty good. So, yeah, no slight on Dennis. This one was funny because it was like Adoy scored, Playtink scored, Janssen scored straight away afterwards. And yeah, if you're Chris Coleman, you're like tearing your hair out. Especially Banzuzi's miss, that was one of the worst misses. Don't know how, again, it was like the Lapusam one, but then he made up for it at least by absolutely rocketing in that equaliser. And you knew it was going to, I just felt like it was going to happen. I feel like this is just pure kind of vibes for me and instincts, but I just feel like they've been a little bit more about that under Coleman, a little bit more kind of like they don't just give up, they will snatch something at the end. They haven't been amazing and playing beautiful, fantastic football, but even he's come out and said he just cares about points at the moment. And they're playing like they just care about points. They're playing like they care and they believe that they can get something out of every single game, which I think is different because we just think about that Oscar Garcia kind of lineup against Molenbeek last year in that game that they really needed to win. And it was just so depressing. And I don't think Coleman would go in with that sort of an approach. And there's it's like a similar kind of switch that we'll talk about later with another manager already, which is very early days. But I noticed that, and Joris probably also wanted to tear his hair out because this would have just like been a nice guarantee of that top six. I still think they're in the top six, but it kind of would have moved them above Anderlecht eventually as well, and kind of stuff like that, like psychologically in that. But a really important point for Leuven. I think after that win over Dender as well, it's like 2 back-to-back games where they've come up with late goals when they've really, really needed them. And that could just be the difference for them with their next couple of games. They've got Westerlo, Kortrijk and Sint-Truiden. They should probably win all 3 of those games. I don't think they will, but they probably should go. If they can go unbeaten, they're fine. They're safe, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think, but I can easily see them going unbeaten in those 3. And I think maybe it's biased because I quite like him, but I do think Coleman has had an impact in that sense. I don't think it's been as big as an impact as people would have expected or hoped it would be. But I think Garcia was negative at this point of the season. I think Coleman's more likely to be a little bit more positive about things and build up the players a little bit more. And I think they are showing that with these kind of late moments in games.
Well, the draw was definitely a fair result. Leuven did deserve something. On another day, if they'd been a little bit more efficient, you mentioned the slightly crazy Banzuzi miss, which he made up for, obviously later on. They could have got even more out of it. And there has been an improvement. It's not, as Ben was saying, it's not dramatic, but it's enough to give them a bit of breathing space. I mean, 8 out of the last 15 gathered, which is an improvement no matter what way you look at it. And I think Ben's right as well. I think that's down to, a slight mentality shift just to how you approach things, because a good number of those points, I haven't checked exactly how many of them, but I know just offhand that a good number of those 8 points have come from late goals as well. So yeah, they're more positive and they stick in games right to the very end. Loved the reaction from the Leuven bench when that goal went in. They might as well have won the league actually. The entire bench piles down into the corner and they jump in each other. Brilliant, including Coleman as well. Unbridled joy. That's absolutely what it's all about. We love that. Antwerp, interestingly, I don't know if Joris has got this stat, he'll tell us in a moment. Antwerp haven't won consecutive games since October, which says a lot about their own game management and things like that. They probably did enough to win this game. Jonas de Rock thought so. Difficult to disagree with him, but he was very fair. He said, look, I think we should have won, but if you fail to take your chances, which they did as well, they did miss some bad chances, I thought, and you don't kill the game, then it's there to get sucker punched, which is what happened. Chris Coleman was just, riding that delirium wave. He said, to be honest, there's just so many things to be happy about really at the moment. He was still on that crest, still at the very top when he went in for his post-match press conference, obviously. I think they're going to be okay. In a way, it doesn't matter where they get some more points from. I think one more win probably will be enough. But yeah, if you offered him 3 draws now, I think, Ben, you're right. I think he would take it. And for Antwerp, really, the main objective's already been achieved. As I was saying last week, I think they need to try and relax now. There's no reason for them to play with any tension and just kind of try and enjoy the playoffs, such as they are.
Yeah, astonishingly, the Antwerp has gotten as many clean sheets or as little clean sheets as their neighbors in Beerschot. Only 4, which is, I touched on this a few weeks ago already as well, but one of the bigger differences between this season and the other previous seasons for them. Of course, and yes, of course, Scott, this was one of my stats as well. No consecutive wins since October. But they could have taken this one, but some lack of composure in the final phases of both halves as well has really cost them in the end only once, but it was once enough since they didn't manage to deepen the gap more. Yeah, on Leuven, of course, so all the good news has already been said. And also, interestingly, only Iquimezi had scored more than 1 goal in the starting 11 as well. That's quite worrying news, which ultimately they scored now 5 in the last 2 games. So that's actually quite a nice stat for them, of course. But these were also the first 2 away goals after 4 away games without scoring. So yeah, that's definitely also something to mention. Still no win at the Bosal as well. That hasn't happened at least in the first division yet. But yeah, scenes after late equalizer, of course, have already been touched on as well. Definitely, the word it. And to come back to Scott's point of the amount of points, well, that would be 4 of those 8 points. I guess the last 2 games, 1 point here, and the 3 points. So I guess we could say in the game against Denver, because both the equalizer and the winner came very late on. And against Club Brugge they didn't score. Against Gent they didn't score, and against Mechelen they scored their only early goal of the season still as well to take that win. But okay, that's a bit of a tangent, but to clarify that. But yeah, they should be fine. They should get enough out of those 3 games, whether that's all points or just a few. It should be enough.
Yeah, they can start looking forward to the playoffs soon. I forgot to say during my little piece, there's a moment in the game I was watching, I was just like, Thibaut Vletings is like the most Chris Coleman player I think I can remember, because he is just the Belgian Chris Gunter to me. A very limited right back that just is very fit, and that's his main attribute. So fans of Wales will obviously remember Chris Gunter. Reading fans remember Chris Gunter never went forwards. So if you just imagine that, but with a Belgian face and Belgian name, and that is Timo Vleting. So I'm not surprised that he's playing lots under Chris Coleman, because he's just Chris Gunter reincarnated in Belgian form. Let's go to Bruges, club against Standard. Obviously, during our recording last week, club were smashing Atalanta and making it through to the next round of the Champions League, which was, we were saying it was a fantastic result. And I think we were all like, yeah, it looks like they're going through. And then Atalanta scored immediately as soon as we stopped recording. So I was like, oh no, what have we done? But it didn't really matter in the end. They were, Middelay made a penalty save. It was all just a bit crazy in the end, but they got there. They've got Aston Villa next. Obviously already faced Aston Villa, already beaten Aston Villa. Got to try and work out if I can get to the game, but 5:45 kickoff in Birmingham seems a little bit impossible from Worthing, unfortunately. But yeah, oh no, sorry, it's an 8 o'clock kickoff on a Wednesday. Even that, yeah, probably a bit impossible, but that should be a good tie. Emery's obviously one of the best managers when it comes to European football. I don't think anyone could deny him that. And yes, club did play well against them at home, but I think over 2 legs it's going to be tricky. But I think they can do it. They played well against Atalanta. They'll have to play better than they've been playing in the league, that's for sure. And Scott, I know you've probably got the numbers for dropped points after European games that you're about to unleash on people, so I won't steal your thunder on that one. But yeah, Jukla scoring, and then obviously Solis getting sent off, the penalty, and then Zaki's penalty, and then Eckhart with the goal. And during the highlights I was watching, it was just like you had the highlights and you had this massive banner for like 0% Jupiler. And I was like, that looks disgusting. Like, who wants 0% Jupiler beer? And then obviously when Eckhart scores, everyone's throwing beer at him. I was like, that's what you do with 0% Jupiler beer. You just launch it at other people because you clearly don't want the stuff. He just was like lapping it up. Like, it was just both him and Zakiri just kind of doing the Max Dean of just celebrating in front of that stand at the Jan Bridal, which you're gonna get some stick for it and get a bit of flack. Obviously we condemn throwing stuff onto the pitch at the players and stuff like that. But I think for Standard fans and players, they probably didn't care less what was being launched at them. They were more than happy with that win. Obviously, this was a great result for Genk, great result for Union as well, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Fantastic result for Standard, who are still in the hunt for the top 6, which I think would be one of the biggest travesties in football ever if that side makes it into the top 6 and then somehow flukes their way into European football, because none of us want to see that team in Europe. No one, not even Standard fans, really don't want to see that team in Europe, because that would be just one of the worst things ever. But yeah, like, Scott, over to you, because I know you got the stats list, but club dropping points after you. But if you offered like us as neutrals and club as fans, like, you can beat Atalanta and go through, or you can lose to Atalanta, go out and then beat Standard, you're taking the win over Atalanta like 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, you would. And on the subject of Jupiler, I know it's the Jupiler Pro League and has been for a while, but, you know, I don't care what percentage of Jupiler you're drinking. Horrible beer. Horrible beer. Can we have somebody else to sponsor the league, please? Yeah, I'd be throwing it on the pitch no matter what percentage it was. What a difference a few days makes. You go from European euphoria to just domestic torture from club's point of view. And in terms of the stats that Ben was alluding to, club definitely have an issue with European hangovers, because they've dropped 17 points immediately after European games throughout the course of the season. I thought it was 9, but I went and checked accurately today. It's actually more. It's 17. So there's no doubt at that level that, you know, there's an issue. It's not unique to them. You know, I haven't checked the points tally dropped by other clubs. Other clubs do it plenty as well, but it's certainly becoming a bit of a pattern. To be fair to Standard, actually, they did point out that obviously domestic football is very different to European football. The domestic game is dirtier all round, to be blunt about it. I think it's more physical. There's more duels. European football on a technical level is a little bit more nuanced. So it is a different thing and requires a different mindset around it. And I thought it was really interesting to see Nicky Hyen start the same starting 11 that did so well against Atalanta as well. Amazing result. Put that out there again, take nothing away from them. But yeah, there is a European hangover issue, and the fact that they still have 2 ties in Europe to come, at least, they will be hoping that they can get a handle on that. Their domestic rivals will be hoping that they can't, because it could play very well into their hands. Obviously, Genk not able to take full advantage of Club dropping points this weekend, but still extending by a point, the 9-point gap now. Just want to touch on some of the poor behaviour, I think, post-match in terms of some of the media reactions to the refereeing. I think Club letting themselves down. I mean, it always surprises me the way that club comms teams and media teams allow players and managers, and in this case, other people, yes, I'm talking about you, Bart Verheijen, the president of Club Brugge, to kind of, go out there and just say stupid things and behave really, really badly. I know Club feel aggrieved. That was quite obvious, but I think language is important, and I think behaviour is important, and I think you've really got to regulate that in order not to fan the flames of things that can very easily get out of hand. Bart Verheijen obviously went and waited for Lawrence Visser outside the dressing room to give him a piece of his mind. It won't be the first time, isn't the first time, it won't be the last he'll do this. Bart's got a bit of a record of doing that. I think it's unprofessional. He's in trouble now. He has apologised, mainly because he knows he's going to be in trouble, so I suspect he's trying to reduce his punishment a little bit. But my message is, just be better. Just be better, because I think there's a direct link between Hans van Aken, a club captain with tremendous experience, saying silly emotional things, even if he is broadly right, and a club president behaving, like a boorish bully, which he's done before, and what happened in front of Dennis Eka Ayenza. He scores, as Ben was saying, in front of the home fans, full-on wind-up. The tribalism of football, you have to take that on the chin. There was a teenage boy right at the front who was probably maybe 13 or 14 at most, spat at Ayenza. Now, there's definitely a direct link between that sort of fan behaviour and having a club president who behaves in the way that Verheijen did this weekend and has done in the past. So that's why you need to be better, so that this thing isn't encouraged. Just be better, guys. Ivan Leko, to be fair to Standard, because I don't want to take anything away from them, obviously really, really delighted. He said we played with courage and we created our own luck. And I think going back to the Jan Bridal and winning in the way that they did will be, a big boost to them. And incidentally, Standard have beaten Club twice this season as well, which is no mean feat, considering how poor offensively generally Standard have been. Their record against the big teams has been a bit mixed on the whole this season, but when they have got wins against some of the other big boys, then it's been impressive and largely unexpected. But yeah, Club won't be panicking still, despite Nicky Hyen's warnings last week, because they've dug themselves domestically out of bigger holes than this one. But having said that, they really should be doing better. And much like Mechelen and some other sides, surprising to see them play with so much tension still.
Yeah, even though we are the Belgian football podcast, Scott gave a perfect analysis of what's going on in global politics at the moment as well. Somewhere in the middle of this conversation or his monologue here. I'll let the listeners find out where it was, but I think it's quite clear. I'll probably add some more things on that particular phase as well. But I guess I'll also focus on Standard first. Indeed, doing the double over Club, which with our first away win against Club Brugge in Jan Breidel since 2013 as well. And Zakiri and Ayenza scoring is not really a surprise. If anyone scores, it's usually them. They scored 15 of their 22 goals. So, yeah, that's more or less equaling to 2/3 of their goal production. But I suppose Bazuni probably was the man of the game, man of the match in the end, and with his first really good game, convincing game, in my opinion, at least for Standard. Yeah, so that's definitely good for them. They still are in with a shout for the Champions playoffs, of course. The thing that is a little annoying for them is that the one side they still that they are getting closer to is the one side they're not playing anymore against. So yeah, that would have made a world of difference as well for them if that would have been the case. But yeah, on Club Brugge then, yeah, Solis, the red card. I get the frustration a little. On the other hand, yeah, okay, the first yellow card was it a dive? Was it not? Well, even if it is, yeah, it was a dive, I guess. But is it worth a yellow? Well, sometimes these get given as a yellow, sometimes they don't. Especially with players that actually do fall and go for the dive a lot as well. In this case, whether that's completely correct on a specific phase, that's maybe something else as well. But then you still need to be smarter because you already have that first yellow card to not get that second one. So and that one was like, well, if the studs would have been a little few inches higher, then it would already been more on the verge of a straight red card as well. So I don't see the big issues in there as well. But in the penalty decision, I know handball rules annoying, but this was a clear one given the rules that they're hard at the moment anyways as well. And okay, not every decision was correct from Visser, but the big ones, like I've just mentioned, I think he got correct, or you can defend at least. Like, it's not that it's a unique case like of injustice that something that first yellow card was given. Yeah, okay, sometimes it gets given, sometimes not, but that's the kind of interpretation you should still leave to the referees, of course. But yeah, so Tol is a red card, and Onyedika going off quite early on as well. Probably they're two more important outfield players together with that strong midfield. Of course, in general, that's interesting. Still not sure about Onyedika, if that's something very serious. Probably not. Otherwise, we would have heard a bit more of that, I guess. But worrying that there are injuries. Worries he was already playing with his knees taped in, I guess. So like, there's definitely something niggling there, and it looks like they can't really miss him. Or, I mean, it's more that whole core of Yashari, Onyedika, and Van Aken working well together. All three of them on the pitch, it really makes a big difference. They are the best midfield in Belgium. If they're all there, because they're very complementary. But if one of those isn't there, it will be felt for Club Brugge. The replacements are good players, but not to that standard for sure. And yeah, of course, also another thing that makes it a bit more ridiculous: frustrations boiling at Club Brugge. Well, it's not necessary at all at the moment anyway. Like, they still have everything in their own hands, even in the league. Playoffs are not even started yet. I did not expect this behavior at the moment from the fans and players and well, everyone around that club at this stage of the season, at least. If this would have happened 3 games after game 7 in the playoffs, and situation is more or less like this, then yeah, I can understand it a bit more. But now it just, it's not a good look, and just totally unnecessary at this point, I think. Although, of course, some of Scott's other points, like the 17 points dropped after Europe, will not have played a favorable role there in not creating a nervous situation there. But I mean, as an opponent, I'm not unhappy to see that happen, as I did not expect that to happen, especially at this stage. Well, it doesn't exclude the option that this will happen at Genk as well, or at Union, because like both teams actually have in recent history has cases like that as well. of one boiling over. Also, in Genk's case, also in the direction boxes, so on the little direction or like sportive management. In Union, maybe less on that, but more on the field. Sometimes when the pressure rises, they don't get there. By the way, I have to mention that as well. Union, I think, actually have a really good record after European games, which is very strange but impressive at the same time. But I think we probably can touch on that later on as well. But yeah, just surprised to see that happen at Club Brugge, and not unhappy with it, whatever the outcome of this might be. It's a bit ironic that what I say, like, you can blame Visser a lot of times, you can blame the referees a lot of times, but like one time where things are not going to Brugge's favor, and it's actually correct or at least defendable. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the right time either, but it's definitely something to think about. And I mean, I'm not even going to call it an apology for his behavior if he says it was more like, yes, it was wrong. I was wrong, but I stay with my statements because I just repeat what I said before. But before that, I at least said I was wrong, and I want to open a discussion.
Also, obviously, Scott mentioned that they need to have a new beer sponsor. I come up with, I think, the Quack Pro League. I think it works so well. You can play so many games with it. Be fantastic. So we'll definitely bring that. And then Joris, just jumping your point about Onyedika and Yashari. I feel like those two, obviously Van Aken as well, like all three of them could play at higher levels, and that's why it's so hard if you've got someone coming in that, like Nielsen, Vetles, and those sort of guys, they're really good Pro League players, but they're not on that level. Like Onyedika and Yashari, like Yashari against Atalanta, he was just fantastic. He's such a good little player. And to think they brought him in without any kind of sporting director or anything in play it was quite funny. We were questioning why they're making transfers of that one, but I think it's pretty clear why they brought him in, because he's fantastic.
He's just while you mentioned Yashari, you name dropped him there. I think he's been one of the most impressive players, full stop, all season. I think he's just got better and better, and I got to see him up close in November when Club Brugge obviously were playing Celtic, and I was watching them off the ball, obviously, which you only get a chance to do with players when you're at a game. Absolutely sensational reading of the game and the movement and his appetite, and I mean, top player. I think really, really good.
He reminds me, and this is not disparaging him or anything, but his ability to kind of like read the game and win the ball back is a bit kind of Al Hassan Yusuf at Antwerp had that particular ability that was really good at getting the ball back. But Ishari takes it to the next level because then he can get the ball back and he can carry it distances. He can beat players and stuff. He's kind of got that dual role, and he's just one of those midfielders I love watching. And it is funny when you see him come up against kind of players that are bigger than him and he just starts bullying them and pushing them around. It's quite fun. I like players like that. Little man kind of syndrome thing. Obviously, that result was really, really good news for Genk. Terrible news for Ghent, I'd say, because it means Standard are still kind of in with a shout at that top six. This one obviously finished 0-0. And I didn't actually realise that Daniel Milicevic is actually unbeaten in the league. That just kind of completely went over my head because they've just been very unimpressive. They also beat Betis. I don't really know how much I'm counting that result. I mean, yeah, it's cool, it's great, but like the tie was over. Like by then, they completely messed that one up in the kind of the first leg. Even though they had like a million chances to score, like they had so many chances that first half to kind of stay in that tie, but they just didn't.
They messed that tie up in Larn, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Northern Ireland debacle, and I think it goes to show with all the sides that have gone out, you want to get into that kind of top 8 in the Conference League and Europa League, because you don't know who you're going to come up against in these next rounds, and all the ties have been difficult. And it's not surprising that the sides went out. We'll talk about the Union game in a second because obviously there's massive controversy around that. But Joris, I have to say I didn't watch this game, so I have nothing to say about it. And the fact that it was 0-0 means I didn't even go and watch the highlights. So over to you to kind of tell me what happened, because I'm all ears.
Yeah, it was not the best of games for sure. Indeed, no 13th home win in a row for Genk, so that club record streak has been broken. Still unbeaten, of course, though, so that's nothing too bad. So either, not that much to mention indeed. Like, I think we're not at their best either. Maybe partially because of knowing that Bruges result. I mean, I guess it could sway both ways there as well. Like, maybe you get more of an idea of like, let's go for it, take the 3 points, go for the 3 points even more, or okay, on the other hand, okay, 1 point you already are secure there to still gain on them in the keep that streak going, the unbeaten streak at least. But not that much. Eluadi trying to do what Munoz did the day before, more or less, with the Crystal Palace, but where Munoz did score from a difficult angle and hammered the ball in. With Eluadi, the strike ended up against the crossbar. But apart from that, Gent were playing well until the final third, the front third, I guess. There, Van Zer, you could. He's not there yet. Okay, I'll put it that way. He didn't look entirely fit. He couldn't really make a difference with his speed. Smith's got a yellow card on him. That was the one phase where he definitely did some damage with his speed. But apart from that, Sadik, who is probably surprisingly fast for his posture as well, but he was not getting past him at any point in the game, more or less, except one time at the end where there was a long ball there where Van Zer had a good shot as well. Well, it took a shot in 1/3 where maybe should not have tried that. But indeed, Gent still unbeaten in 2025. The caveat there is, of course, that's 4 draws and two wins only, so it doesn't get you that many more points yet. Genk not pushing hard enough, especially at the end of both halves, Genk could have probably pushed a bit harder because you could feel the tiredness a little bit against the pressure that Gent had been putting on the Genk defense, and Genk on the whole was wearing off a little, tiring off a little. They didn't do enough with that. Draw ultimately probably the right result. Also worth mentioning, of course, that without any other comments, I mean, a draw was the right result, but like Roof breaking his hand, or like and then to hear the day after that this maybe should not have been a penalty because it was his shoulder that he did it with. That's a bit weird because he didn't break his shoulder, did he? But even if so, would that not have been a penalty in the end? Well, I mean, it probably was, but that would not have been an entirely deserved win if that penalty would have gone in anyway as well. But we saw a surprising amount of this very specific phases in the space of 9 days as well, and across the Jupiler Pro League and Europe.
Yep, Genk securing a European ticket. Another massive plus, and another season objective, I suppose, ticked off from Torsten Fink's point of view. We talked quite a lot about, how having no European football could be a very, very positive thing for them domestically this season, which has absolutely turned out to be the case. But yeah, returning to European football, and albeit a playoff round, a very, very good thing. I think Joris is right. I think a draw was a fair result. For me, that's a stonewall penalty, and just as much of a stonewall penalty as Union didn't get against Ajax as well. Funny that actually both goalkeeping challenges there that were not penalties in the end, which should have been, both led to nasty injuries. Davy Roof obviously breaking his hand, and Rodriguez obviously suffering a broken nose. So the degree of force in those two challenges, regardless of whether you give the foul or not, was obviously excessive enough. Ghent, on the other hand, the tension's going to start ramping up a wee bit because they still have some work to do. As Ben was saying, standard result means that that final playoff 1 spot is still up for grabs.
Yeah, they've still got a chance, but like I said, it really shouldn't happen. Like, no one wants to see it. Please don't let it happen. What will happen? So Ghent will be in the playoff 2, and they can win playoff 2. So I'm just going to cough.
Thought of Standard in playoff ones causing Ben to
Choking on
choke. That's how badly Ben can't see that.
This can't. Yeah,
It's depriving him of the very air from his lungs.
literally. Let's talk about Union. That flipping Ajax game, absolutely stormed to 2-0 lead. Ajax down to 10 men. I was like, they're just gonna. They were all over them. Like, Ajax looked terrible, like really bad. Union just pressed them into oblivion. Buffal was just like pulling out all the stops, all the tricks. It was just so good. They just couldn't get that winning goal in normal time. Harsh penalty to concede, and they should have had a penalty at the end. I think I don't see how that's not a penalty at the end against what's that old bloke's name? Pasveer. He just takes him out, completely misses the ball, nowhere near it. It's a stonewall penalty. They even look at it and then they don't give it. And even I think it was Jonathan Pearce was doing the TNT commentary, which was great because like Pearce just there's no kind of like air of superiority or anything about watching teams that he hasn't actually watched much of. He just gets proper into it. And he was just you could tell he was like, this is one of the best games he's watched all season. He absolutely loved it. He loved the Union. He loved the Ajax team as well. Even he was like, that's a penalty. Like, how is that not a penalty? Rodriguez is down, like bleeding, and there's just nothing given. And I just couldn't believe it. I genuinely couldn't believe it. And I think the place would have erupted if it had happened. But yeah, not to dwell on it too much, but doesn't Francesco Farielli just remind you of Tedesco? There's something about Italian, small Italian men that like fancy themselves a little bit too much about him, isn't it? Like, you know what I mean? He's just a little bit annoying, and his team was completely played off the park. But he was dressed up to go to the fashion show afterwards with his roll neck and all that sort of stuff. I even read a thing in the week about apparently he wants to leave at the end of the season because he sees Ajax as a stepping stone to bigger things. It's like, focus on like securing the Eredivisie and performing well at Ajax before you start thinking of moving anywhere else. But yeah, he's got a little bit Tedesco about him. Don't like that. And I was so gutted for Union. And you know what Union are like, they'll take it on the chin and move on, which is clearly what they did. But they should have won that game, in my opinion. But then they go and beat Anderlecht, so they were pretty happy. And again, they were the better team. They were going to give a shout out to Usainu Niang, who scored the second goal. I thought against Ajax, there's something I just really like watching about him because he's absolutely rapid, but he just loves going with the ball as well. Like, he loves trying to just use that speed and dribbling to attack people. And then there was a moment in the Ajax game where he shoots from like 30 yards out and it goes so wide. And Pocagnoli's like, you could just see him. He just says, "What the fuck are you doing?" Pass the fucking ball. You can literally, like, they've zoomed in and that's what he said. Apologies for the swear, but it cracked me up so much just seeing him say that because you could just tell that was like, he doesn't want to see that ever. But his finish was nice against Anderlecht. Good to see him get a goal. I think he's been a really fun player to watch this season. And I mean, Hubert's got to be under so much pressure. And with a certain man in Scotland getting sacked as well, I mean, there's probably even more pressure because it's kind of like, do you try and grab him now as soon as you can, or do you wait until the summer, but then he might be gone? Hein van Huizenbroek's come out and said that Brian Reamer did a much better job than Hubert's done. And it's like, you can't actually argue against that. He's probably right.
I agree with that. Absolutely. It makes the choice even more strange as well. But, we know who made that choice.
Yeah, we said it at the time. Obviously, Anderlecht went out in Europe as well. They lost over the 2 legs to Fenerbahce. Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce, obviously. They lost, I think it was 5-2 on aggregate. 3-0 down by the end of the first leg. Again, they shouldn't have been in that position. They started the Europa League campaign fantastically and then dropped the ball. They drew with RFS Riga in Latvia. Poor result there. A couple of other poor results. And then you end up playing Fenerbahce, who are on a ridiculously good run of form and have some very, very good players and a very, very good head coach. And that's just what happens. This result, obviously, Union, only 3 points behind Club Brugge. Only what is that? 12 points behind Genk. Half that down. I mean, they're well and truly in this title race, and now they don't have European football to contend with either. So, yeah, whereas for Anderlecht, it is cup final or bust, I think, now. I don't think, obviously, the title, technically they are still in it because of the points halving, but form-wise, and the players are just all out of form, the key players and stuff like that. So, yeah, great win for Union. Obviously, there was that picture of Alex at the end of the game, who looked absolutely delighted in the stands, and we're not surprised that he was, and the whole fan base was absolutely buzzing. So yeah, great win for them. Another poor week, I guess, for Anderlecht.
Yeah, Union were great, and on Joris's point, another really good performance after a really good European performance. Sebastian Pocagnoli was quite keen to talk post-match about how mentally and physically stronger was the phrase he used than Anderlecht. And this was kind of set up. I mean, some people think this particular Brussels derby doesn't matter that much and there isn't that much heat and needle in it. I'm not buying any of that. I saw some of Anthony Maurice's pre-match team talk in the dressing room because Union released that on their social media, and he made it very clear how important this game is and how continuing the great record that Union have got in this fixture is really important. I mean, Anderlecht have only won one of the last 12 now. Really poor record against Union, and you just had to watch Sebastian Pocagnoli's reaction to the first goal. Was quite unlike him. You don't see such unbridled expression of passion from him that often on the touchlines, but it was entirely because of what this fixture was. So that this fixture does have fire to it. There's no doubt about it. Anyone who says otherwise, obviously hasn't been watching kind of too closely. And Anderlecht, although they had their fair share of chances in this game, offensively, when their best players are not grasping the nettle, it just doesn't happen for them. They need their best players to grab a game and go, I'm going to make something happen. And David Hubert actually said that afterwards. He said there wasn't enough initiative or energy. Our offensive players didn't. Yeah, he was basically suggesting, I think, that some of the bigger players in his side were arguably hiding in this fixture. That's what I took from that, which I thought was kind of quite damning. But Ben's right. I think the rest of the season now for Anderlecht is entirely about that cup final. That changes really the complexion of the season if they can just win some silverware. You know what I mean? We know how important that is to them. Not sure that's going to have much of an impact on David Hubert's long-term future, but yeah, the cup final's all important. I also agree with Ben. I think, as I was saying last week, I think Union are getting better generally all the time, and may very well be peaking at the right point in the season. Ben said, I think maybe 4 or 6 weeks ago, that it's going to be really interesting to see if Union can do to other sides in playoff one what some of the other sides have done to them, because they're a club who, 4th successive season as a playoff one side, real consistency and strength there. I mean, they're a top side in Belgium now. They've proved that consistently over the piece. It was always there historically and culturally, but they've proved it consistently in terms of the results now as well. You kind of can't doubt that, regardless of where your own allegiances are. And I think they will have a big say in where things go in the end. And I think they fancy their chances because they play with a fearlessness at their best. We know that they have nothing to fear. They've been in this position before, and I think they enjoy being the hunter as much as they've generally responded on the whole very positively to being the hunted.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's some truth in that. Still a bit of a bogey side they are for Anderlecht, even though also have to admit it was only the first win in 5 against them now as well against the neighbors, but also they were the only side in the top 6 that have won their game this weekend, so they're the clear winner of the weekend here at the top end of the table. And definitely getting closer to Club Brugge as well now, of course, only 3 points off of them. They might even catch them before the playoffs end. Well, I think the playoffs for at least two of the sides of the top three will exist out of 11 games instead of 10, with that final fixture between Genk and Union as well. If either side wins that fixture, this could put, on the one hand, Union maybe out of the race, and on the other hand, put everything a bit more closer to each other again. And make it even more competitive, and make it really a 3-horse race, which it at the moment is still. But even though that game, of course, is less important than the games they will have later on in the playoffs, but definitely something to keep in mind. First goal for Kalali in the league as well, that might be good for his confidence, for sure. And on Anderlecht, that's just 1 point taken against the top three sides this season in the regular season so far. That's dire. Not more to say there. I guess there always have been injuries throughout the whole season, and there still are, of course. Even now, well, Scott was mentioning their best players and attacking players need to perform well. Well, Dolber is out. Idozi is also out already for a while. A few others are just back, so they got or the recent reinforcements, so they're not consistent yet. Yeah, things could still click, not to win a title, but maybe to be a spanner in the wheels for one of the contenders and move up or take a fourth place. Noteworthy on that front as well is, of course, Vertongen making his reappearance in the end. So already in Europe on Thursday, and now also in this game. But yeah, can you rely on him for the last few games? It's good to see him back anyway, and that his career didn't really end without these moments anymore. But will it be enough to really keep him to keep them competitive or get them even more competitive? That's actually the goal with him, of course, in these final games. Wait and see, I guess. And not only Hazi was fighting with his own fans this weekend. Fighting, luckily not in the physical way with Hazi almost, I guess, but also Sardella went into the spoken, at least, battle with the fans. Yeah, not a battle you should pick, but not more to, spoken and gestures, at least, not a battle you should pick, I fear, or that you can win. Never a good sign. Even though I can understand sometimes, but especially the players. But yeah, unfortunately, in the world how it is, you better don't do that. Let's see if this will actually have more consequences for him probably not, but like this could harm, of course, the confidence of the fans even more. And you're down in that rabbit hole then. But actually an expected win, I guess, for Union, even with their European fixture, where, of course, they played the whole game, equivalent of a whole game against 10 men, and unfortunately couldn't. Well, they did well until that point, and they had made the gap, had closed the gap by that time. Unfortunately, they couldn't put it over the line. Okay. Still something to mention as well, I guess, as has been also mentioned it with Beerschot against Dender for 60 minutes or so. Union was even longer. Unfortunately, they couldn't clear it, even if indeed there was also, again, a similar phase with the goalkeepers, as you already touched on, both of you.
Yeah, no, it's super, super frustrating for Union, but at least they turned it around and did make it competitive, but then they really should have finished it off. So I think in the winter, Kortrijk signed, was it 2 strikers or 3 strikers? I can't quite remember. Although I think technically Jean-Kevin Duverne was signed as a defender, but he's actually the only one that's scoring any goals, and he's their second top scorer overall with 3 goals in 4 games. This one was bizarre, really bizarre. So free kick comes in, he heads it home. Referee's blown for a foul on Thibaut Sommers in the build-up. Sommers is pushed over by Nacho Ferry. Sommers goes down easily, let's be fair, but Sommers has a bit of a habit of going down easily, but there's still contact and it's still a push. And VAR intervenes and then they're checking offside. And I was like, why are we checking offside? And then they're checking the foul and then they review it. And then Sommers said that the explanation for the referee was that he didn't want to give the foul, or like because it happened before the ball was kicked, it's not a foul now or something. And that just doesn't make any sense. And I don't understand why this was given as a goal at all. It like makes absolutely no sense. But to be fair, in that first half, Cercle were rubbish. They were really bad. Kortrijk were actually quite good. And Stork, I don't know what he does. The dark arts, voodoo, conspiracy theories, all that sort of stuff. But they suddenly looked like competitive and like they cared and something like that. And it's like, why don't you just get him in December? Like he's clearly on your list constantly. He actually wanted to stay. And if they should have kept him.
That's the wild thing. I was going to say, you mentioned it. That's the wild thing. You know, he's been very public about saying, I wanted to stay, but it didn't happen because it looked like there was going to be new owners. Yeah. Sliding doors moment.
The owners for all of 5 seconds who had no money. They were good. Those Kaminsky clowns. And then Cercle do score. It looks like there was a push in that one. Build up to that one anyway. So I guess kind of swings around about it, kind of comes back around to that. And then probably the biggest, what could be potentially would have been, depending on how these formats and all that sort of stuff changed. Perrin hitting the post and literally the last minute with. I don't think they signed him to do this either. Cut inside on his left foot and curl one into the far corner, but he tried, and unfortunately for them, it didn't go in. But I think this result has me more worried for Cercle than it does for most other teams, because I then look at their run-in of Antwerp, Club, and Anderlecht to come. That's tough. They've also got Jagiellonian Białystok in the Conference League in the next round of the Conference League. Polish champions, so no mugs. Having another reasonably decent season. They've actually done quite well in Europe as well. So it's not going to be easy, that one. And it's kind of like, is that coming at the worst possible time or the best possible time? You just don't know. But they're currently, this point moves them out of that bottom four at the expense of Westerlo. But they have the hardest running of all those sides down there that are still realistically with a shot of getting out of it. Kortrijk have St. Truiden, Leuven and Ghent. So probably all winnable games if this is the way Stork's going to get them playing, but they still can't score. And Duverne having 3 goals and being the second top scorer, and he's only played 4 games, is wild. Wild in the fact that he scored 3 goals, but also wild that puts him just behind Ferry, who only scores in bunches anyway. So it was good signs from Kortrijk, but it just feels like far too late.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely better from them in a meaningful way, I think, not just in they've been slightly better this week. Stork is the master of discipline and structure, I think. That's fundamentally what he brings in different ways. He's already put a new regime in place, new requirements of the players, met with the players individually, made it clear what's expected of them. So, and he has a track record of being very successful at this. It's going to be really interesting to see just kind of what happens now as well. We're getting on to talking about something that's going to impact on this in a minute. But yeah, they were much better. Stork was actually quite happy. He said, look, I can build on this. So he's obviously seen an initial response to his return. Veldhofer being quite philosophical, saying this may yet turn out to be a golden point for us. My advice to Cercle with that schedule, bearing in mind what happened around some of their choices with resting players earlier in the season in Europe, do not do this at this point in the season. Just play your strongest side, and then what's going to happen will happen. But play your strongest side, and you leave no room really for unwanted criticism and issues in the camp that there shouldn't be. So I hope they're going to approach that differently.
Yeah, couldn't agree more there. In dire straits again with the games against Antwerp, Club and Anderlecht. Indeed, that's definitely tough, but they can maybe indeed get some confidence in Europe even. Maybe, of course, how these games will go. Also was same sort of foul at both goals. Still a bit funny to me as well that it's still both goals were allowed. Second one, arguably probably a little less blatant, and maybe also because of the first one actually being allowed, not so weird that it's also allowed. But it's still too clear, in my opinion, at least clear. This push fouls, I guess. On Kortrijk, Ben already mentioned it plenty, but it's not worth mentioning. It's worth more. It's as well. Duverne is already their second goal scorer with 3 goals in 4 games. I mean, and he's a central defender. I mean, that's just crazy. And they need to win against Sint-Truiden. I'll still mention it like that at the moment. In 2 minutes, maybe already not anymore. But but noteworthy for them as well, of course, is that they scored 10 of their 22 goals with headers in Kortrijk. Of course, 22 goals is now, together with Standaard, the worst attack in the league. But still, they scored 10 of their goals with headers. That already puts that perspective maybe a bit into Verne already being the second, as a center back, already being the second goal scorer. 2 of his 3 goals were also headers, if I'm not mistaken, and then a worldie as well, of course, for the third one. But mere results for both either side. In Kortrijk. They could need a win against Sint-Truiden. That still goes, I guess. But if they would have been able to hold on in this game, they could have even overtaken Sint-Truiden, which is wild to think about as well, actually, given how we've been speaking about both sides, I guess, across the whole season. For the majority of the season, of course, Sint-Truiden definitely had some bad spells and are in one as well. But but let's see if all of this is still relevant.
The moment people have all been waiting for. The proposed new league format. So I'll quickly, this is I guess it's been leaked, we can say. I'll probably just float it out to see what people's reaction are. So this is from the sports website, obviously pretty reliable stuff. So it looks like we're going to have another league format. I feel like we do this every couple of seasons, don't we? Just kind of change things around. So this time, obviously, it's currently a 16-team league with the playoffs. It's going to turn to an 18-team league without the playoffs. So obviously, that changes a lot of stuff in terms of who's coming up and stuff like that. So if that is agreed upon, obviously you'll get the 2 teams coming up from the second tier. Then there's a decision to make about relegation. And that's kind of, I think, by the look of it, what needs to be discussed is whether the team that finishes bottom this season will have to face the team that finishes in the playoffs or wins the playoffs in the second tier. So currently that would obviously be Scott against one of those teams in the playoffs. And as I've already kind of nailed my colours to the mast, they should just scrap that, promote the third team that wins the playoffs and just send Beer Scott down because they don't deserve to stay in the league after their performances this season. And then it kind of gets a little bit complicated, doesn't it? Because then it's like in the future years, it looks like there'd just be potentially one relegation or no relegation, depending on kind of what happens. And it would just be one team from the second tier playing a team that finishes bottom in the first tier. But I may have read that or misinterpreted that one. So it'd be 2 relegation, 1 definite relegation, and then one of the playoff matches, or just 2 up, 2 up, 2 down. Joris looks just as confused as I do. I'm looking at Joris for like confirmation of what is.
I think 2 up and 2 down, yes, in that future scenario, but I'm not completely sure at the moment either.
Okay, well, yeah. Hopefully, I'd hope it's 2 up, 2 down. I'm not having what I'd been imagining was like there'd be this weird playoff between the bottom team and one of the teams in the second tier, but 2 up, 2 down. Fine. I think just the one fear about the whole thing is that, yes, moving to 18 teams, it adds kind of like we get to see more teams in the top flight. It's good for them in terms of revenue spread and stuff like that. It makes it a little bit trickier in the second tier because obviously that there's no playoffs, so it'll just be that straight 2. And it looks like they're going to extend the second tier as well to potentially to have 16 teams, with 4 youth teams. Conspiracy corner's already started over here. Who might be happy with this slight change, but playoffs will be gone. And while part of me is like, that'd be great, another part of me is like, if we look at the league this year as it currently is, it'd pretty much be done and dusted like now, almost, wouldn't it? Obviously give and take a couple of games, but Beerscott would have already been down for a while. Kortrijk wouldn't have much to play for. So you do lose that, and then obviously those second playoffs. But again, it's just kind of like you have to accept that's what most leagues are actually like, and this is quite a weird one. I think the best thing was obviously like the team that gets the most points over the course of the season actually wins the league, and I think that is what is important at the end of the day. And the team that gets the least points gets relegated. Like the 2 teams that the least points get relegated, and then 2 teams from the second tier come in. So yeah, we'll see. This is obviously with a massive caveat that the vote is going to take place on Thursday to kind of iron out these things, and whether or not it will actually affect this year's, how it happens this year. That's kind of the main thing. It's like, what do you do if you're going to make such a drastic change? Because if you just suddenly said only Beerscott are going down, or only the team that finishes bottom are going down, or they have to face like that playoff game to decide who's going down, they might not even go down. Like, all this kind of fun, exciting chaos we've had at the bottom of the table just is completely pointless. And it just doesn't matter. And like St. Jude have been crap and they're fine. Kortrijk have been crap and they're fine. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of, they'll be fine and safe and stuff. So it's going to be interesting and to see how it goes, and whether it feels to me like the benefits are the team, like what I said about like the team with the most points win the league. The negative side of things is that you could get some really honking teams that can just stay bad because they're just not as bad as some of the other teams, and where's the incentive to push for more, and where's their chance of European football. But again, it's the same in other leagues, and I think in my mind that the Premier League's been a bit like that in recent years, where teams are just happy to stay in it to get the money. Where's your ambition? And that's what I've been mad about Leuven for, is like ambition and stuff. So it could make that even worse. But yeah, interested to hear your guys' thoughts. We won't do a challenger roundup because we've got this thing to kind of talk about, and once the decision is made on Thursday, it will actually impact how we talk about the second tier anyway, so we can go into a little bit more detail next week.
Yeah, well, this particular factory reset, that's what I'm going to call it, because that's what it feels like, has been gathering traction over the last few days. There had been some reliable whispers coming out that there was, some serious agreements starting to be formed on the 18-team league. The nuance of how it was going to work, some of the details around relegation, and whether there would or wouldn't be playoffs and how they would work within that 18, still require ironed out. We know the answers to some of that now, not all of them yet. I think there is going to be some discussion in the next few days. Ben's right about the caveat that this is not agreed yet, but it is increasingly likely that they're going to go for the 18. I think if you think about it, probably all of the current sides in the Pro League are going to vote for this, which will almost be enough. I think the sides who finished 3rd to 6th in the playoff spots in the Challenger Pro League are not going to be very keen in this format, because there's a strong likelihood that the promotion opportunities for them longer term now are going to reduce, depending on the finer detail here, but it may not matter which way they vote. I would have voted for this personally, because I think on a sporting integrity level, more generally, I think it's quite a good format. I think it removes the advantage that some of the bigger boys have because of the structure, or the way the structure's been for a while now. I think a straight competition, it has a lot to be said for it. I think it removes the jeopardy for sides who normally are in that cage fight, as we now like to refer to it as well, which is important. They were looking for a way to reduce that as well. And interestingly, and I don't know what your guys' thoughts are, I think another positive here is, in theory, and I stress it's in theory, the fact you're reducing the likelihood and jeopardy around relegation means there is probably an increased likelihood that the clubs stuck down at the bottom are going to spend money they don't have in trying to ensure they stay in the Pro League, because in theory they're slightly more secure. So I suppose in some level there is an argument to be made, and I'm putting it out there, I don't know what listeners think, that could this reduce the likelihood of some clubs spending money they shouldn't be spending, therefore longer term they're more financially secure? Probably not, because people who spend money don't think that way, but I think that's an interesting way of looking at this, an interesting way of trying to sell it as well. Be really interested to hear more about how Challenger Pro League clubs feel about this, because I think it's a tough one on them, there's no doubt about it. And as Ben was alluding to, in some respects, it's going to make the top flight essentially a closed club in a way. Longer term, it's going to make it more difficult for sides in the Challenger Pro League, I think, to achieve the goal of coming up to the top table. And it's a league, as we know, the CPL, which doesn't have a lot of money floating around. So there will be a discussion, I strongly suspect, around the distribution of money around this. And maybe, just maybe, there's a possibility that the CPL clubs are going to get slightly more money than they would have done as part of this being signed off or not. But yeah, still some detail to be arranged. But next week, we should be able to bring you, hopefully, all of the finer detail news on the exact structure. But yeah, it looks like we're going to 18.
I'm not sure if we should say hopefully, because the timing of this is very... That's the most staggering thing to me, especially if it would occur still during the running season. And I can guarantee you either Beerschot or other side that will become last and has to play against the third side in the Challenger Pro League, or that third side, depending on who loses that playoff, will fight this decision while making it during the current season, and I give them a big chance of winning that fight, to be honest, as well, legally. So that should be really like a pact. That's also one of the part of the rules that they will. But I don't think you can make that airtight in such things. But in such decisions, yeah.
I think that's sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Joris. I was just going to say, Joris's point there is really important about the potential legal challenges here, because apparently the Pro League's lawyers have advised the clubs that a change in rules effectively mid-season, which is what we're seeing here, although it's late season, is basically okay. Now, I saw that myself and thought, okay, that's your advice, but I don't think that's the end of this.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. And also, given indeed, like now, the state of things and states in the league at the moment, the timing, like a lot of teams still uncertain of being in that play down, even though the the down three teams seem to be quite certain. And most likely, the fourth spot in that play down doesn't matter even that much. To be fair, they should be safe, but. Yeah, there definitely some things to take there. I personally am in favor of playoffs anyway, to decide maybe the league, at least play downs. I mean, not having them anymore could maybe reduce the sacking of managers as well. Who knows? That might be wishful thinking as well, though. I haven't looked at the statistics before and after the playoffs and playdowns, and in all kinds of forms have been occurred. But it should release the pressure of a lot of sides as well, which at the other hand has the downside, as Ben also mentioned, of probably a lot of end of season games who are just not interesting anymore for us, I guess, to report on necessarily. As we now occasionally have, of course, also still in some of the playoffs or by the end of the playoffs, but it's drastically less than in comparison to in a season with into a league without all these caveats and little mini leagues, I guess, inside as well. The less tension and pressure. maybe it's a good thing, maybe not. That's something to see seen. On a point that Scott mentioned as well, from the money that would go to the Challenger Pro League, that's partially what is also in that potential reform for the Challenger Pro League, that there would be a quota of 4 under 23 sides there who all have to pay 1 million to be in that pro league, in a Challenger Pro League, which is then divided by the others. And at the moment, there's only 3, so that's already less than last season. In this case, it would mean, of course, that the one side would come up. That would be Young Gent, if I'm not mistaken, at the current state of affairs. And well, as things stand, Young Gent would be going down. That would not be possible anymore, even then. So that would be 4 million instead of 3, or potentially next season, potentially only 2 million. That's already part of the money, maybe that that could flow towards the Challenger Pro League from the bigger size as well. But that there's a lot of things to be said about that as well. Also, the second Challenger Pro League would go to 16 teams, so even then there would be 2 additional sites outside of these under 23 squads that would promote. I'm also not sure if that's viable given the licensing and so on. And there's plenty of things to be said. The regular season with 18, or just a regular season, I mean, I understand it, but we're also worried a bit more for like I think you can probably argue that the playoffs, quite confidently, that the playoffs have elevated the stature of the Belgian league, and especially the performance of the Belgian top sides in Europe, because of having more top games as well in domestic league. Of course, this is a discussion we can have endlessly, but I think that there are many signs and indicators that this is the case, and then I'd want to see how that goes a bit more in the longer run as well. Of course, it's not something you will see in the first season, but also in the longer run on that, indirectly then on convincing players and then the level of the league for the top sides as well. But that's me too much long-term thinking for anything in Belgian football, I guess, already. But what are the chances that even if this would become the format, that not in 2 years or 3 years tops, a new format will have to come in place because of, I don't know, some of the indicators might have fallen through, or some top sides, or top sides, let's put it that way anyway, are unhappy with what the format is. I was actually, I just read also during the episode. Yes, I was multitasking a bit more about on how it became. Well, how this all layout came to be. It looks like it was mainly Antwerp, Club Brugge, and Anderlecht that were behind it. While I actually was convinced Genk would be, because of the situation with Young Genk, and also the state of the club at the moment being good in one season, bad in another one, which could increase the chances of getting more titles. To be honest, I'm not going to lie about that. But it looks like they were, this Young Genk story probably pushed them over the line, though, to maybe it's not voted yet, of course, but to try to confirm this format as well. It does not matter necessarily in the end, but interesting to see how that develops. And I mean, I'm very curious who's gonna fight the legal battle.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. Also, just want to say, bookmark this, and we'll see you in 2 years' time to talk about the next format change in the Belgian Pro League, because no doubt that will happen. So yeah, can't wait to do this all again in 2 years, guys. It's going to be fun. We will just repeat this conversation again and again and again, but we'll see what happens. Obviously, if you follow us on kind of social media and stuff, we will obviously talk about the decision when it's made, and we can talk about the impact on the second division next year, because we kind of next week. Sorry, we've kind of spoken about the first division this week, but yeah, we can talk about the second tier, the ramifications for promotion, relegation, all that stuff when we actually know what's happening. But that probably about does it for this week's episode. Guys, it's always been a pleasure getting back together with a trident.
It has indeed. I think we all miss it when that's the case. Join us again next week when hopefully we'll have some cast iron answers to all of this, or perhaps we'll be, perhaps it'll be a deja vu moment. They'll pull the rug from under our feet and we'll be discussing an entirely different format that wasn't even on the table this time next week. Such is the speed with which these things move.
Yep. Well, I'm not excluding an impasse either. Again, nothing moving forward. That would be the most logical thing. But okay, it sounds like it's more advanced than that at the moment. But anyway, I hope my voice and my nasal voice wasn't too annoying for this whole time. Hopefully I'll be better next week as well again on that front.
Absolutely. Yes. Fingers crossed for a full bit of health, another Trident episode next week, and some clarification on what's actually happening over in Belgium. But yeah, as always, thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you enjoy it, please do leave a review on your podcast app of choice. If you really, really enjoy it, you can obviously donate to us at buymeacoffee.com as well. Yeah, as always, thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.